Today's guest exemplifies community action and volunteerism. She's the recipient of the YWCA Women of Distinction Community Champion Award for 2020. A lifelong resident in Momart, Janet Kotylak, and Janet, you'll have to correct me if I didn't quite get the name wrong. I did some practicing before we went live today. Janet joins us to talk about her commitment to education in our province and for students across our country. Janet, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here today.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So congratulations first on the award.
Thank you.
Did you...
I was just going to say you did pretty fine on my name. It's Kotylak, but Kotylak is often how people say it. So we're
okay, Kotylak.
Yeah.
Right? Kotylak. Okay, there we go. I will get it right at the end.
Good.
You know, pronunciation is one of the things that I work on the most before we go live with these sessions because, you know, being in Saskatchewan, we have a real mix of names that come from all directions.
For sure.
So tell me about this award. Did you know that you had been nominated? And, you know, what was your reaction when you found out then that you won?
Well, the process is such that you have to accept the nomination. So I knew I was being nominated. And in fact, my nominator called me and asked if I would agree to be nominated. And, you know, my first initial reaction to that was, you know, there's so many people that have done so much in the pandemic. Like, are you sure? And she said, yeah, because we need to highlight education. We need to shine a spotlight on the fact that we can do that through you.
Mm-hmm.
So
excellent.
That was, the first piece. And what was my reaction? I mean, to be honest, I was really surprised. I had looked at what the other candidates in my category had brought to the table. They were all fantastic leaders. And trusteeship in my role is a job you do really quietly behind the scenes. So I wasn't sure that people would recognize and understand the work.
Right.
But obviously credit to my nominator for putting that through in a way that people understood. And whoever the nominating team is, I need to give them more credit.
Yes.
So.
You know, one of the most interesting things I think with COVID is every sector has been impacted in some really different ways. But when you look at the education sector as a whole, we kept kids in school for the most part. You know, there were some parents in favor of that and some parents not. And as a trustee, you couldn't win. You were going to have parents upset with you no matter which direction you went. How, as the chairperson of the board, how are you helping to manage that?
Well, April was a tough month. In the south part of the province, we had gone out and then had to go back. And yes, you're right. You know, you couldn't make everybody happy, and maybe happy is not the right word, but you know, everybody was at their own place with COVID and
Yes.
their own beliefs. And I really respected that, but we were tasked with making the decisions that we had to make. We followed the health orders really closely. And we just really tried to say education is our business, but health is theirs. And we're going to look towards them as the experts. I also, you know, serve provincially on the Saskatchewan School Boards Association. So along with that role and the way they structured things, we were kept up to date weekly on calls. So, you know, those pieces where you got continual information really were helpful when you make big decisions. And, you know, in the end, we did get feedback from parents on both ends of that spectrum,
Yes.
but it was respectful, and I respect that. So,
you know, and I think that's an important role, being able to collect that respectful feedback. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you're getting screamed at, you kind of stop listening. And so parents being able to feel like they were being heard, one of the things, and I'll put my parent hat on for a second, we didn't know what went on behind the scenes. We didn't know if there was weekly meetings. We didn't know if it was just email communication. And without any criticism of my own school board, that was one piece that I would have really liked to have understood better, is absolutely make a decision. I will support you 100%, but help me understand where the information comes from to make the decision. And knowing that there had been weekly meetings, I think that would have really helped a lot of parents out, whichever side you're on. If you want your kids in school and they're being pulled out, or vice versa, right? Just that little bit of extra information. So as a board, and then even at the provincial level, how were you managing the volumes of information that came at you, probably from some different directions, to be able to weigh it all and then make a decision that you felt good about? How did you weigh all of that?
Well, there was key decision points along the way. And of course, if you take it back to the beginning of it all, the first decision to go out of school was made by the premier back in March of 2020.
Yes.
And so that one was handed to us. So we just went, how can we provide this extra learning to those who still want to be engaged? Yeah. And that was tough. We weren't set up, especially in rural Saskatchewan. So
Yes.
Kudos to our IT department. We did a ton of lobbying around rural internet that helped with getting SaskTel to provide free data, things like that. So, it was a joint effort. The volume of information, it kind of came at it a piece at a time. So then the next step was the back to school plan, and making sure that we could influence that and bring some public voice to that. That was important. As a trustee, I work to bring that community voice to all those decisions. We have the education experts who I thoroughly appreciate and respect, and we work closely with our director of education, Luc Larmagneau, and his team of education staff. And every step along the way, it was like that. So we had a back to school plan, and then things changed. All of a sudden, we're deciding on masking, and then masking became mandatory. And so you just kept rolling. And certainly a lot of time spent by myself and the whole team of education people, really.
Absolutely. So Janet, you strike me as a volunteer who is full of a lot of energy and passion for where you put your volunteer time. Why education? Why not the community of Momart? Why not the rink, the hockey? How did you end up in education and now spending so much time there?
Oh, that's a good question. So it was the year actually before my first started school, back in about 97. That I got approached to sit on the local board, and I said, I don't even have kids in school yet. I had got one call, two calls, that the board was having a big changeover. They just really needed people. And the last call was my husband's aunt, and I couldn't say no. So she just isn't the person you'd say no to. So I got on there, and it just exploded from there. I actively farm with my husband. That's our livelihood. But I also wanted to do some other things in my life, and I needed people. Yes. And so I spent 8 years locally, and so spent a lot of time working on my local school and what I could do to help there. And then during the time of amalgamation in 2005, there was an opportunity to run for that position. And then it just became a passion. Once you're in it, you either love it or you don't stay with it. So
exactly. Yeah. And is the position both with Prairie Valley and with the Saskatchewan school boards? Are those both elected positions or just the one?
Yeah. So everything I do is elected. So I started out elected from my subdivision. So that's subdivision 7, and there's 10 communities and 5 schools. That's my home. And that's why I do this, is I do it to bring their voice. And then from there, I've been privileged to be elected by the board that I serve on, Prairie Valley, to the chairperson of that board. And so that's 9 consecutive. And I served as chair and vice chair previously. And then from there, I ended up kind of getting lobbied and asked to serve provincially. And so I'm in my 9th year serving the Saskatchewan School Boards Association, and I represent 6 boards on that, the provincial body. And I think I counted in total, I would have put my name on a ballot for, let my name stand for 21 elections. Sometimes you were acclaimed, sometimes you were elected. So, yeah.
So take me back to that first election, because I actually think that that's a real strength for anyone who's willing to put their name on a ballot. That in itself takes courage. It's a little bit like that popularity contest back in high school. So take me back there. Like, what did it feel like the first time you were like, oh, okay, sure, I'll put my name on a ballot?
Well, okay, so true confession here. I ran in 2003 in the first rural amalgamations, and I didn't win that election.
There
And
we go.
so then I was kind of done. Did the thing. I did brochures and whatever. And then in 2005, the province decided to further amalgamate. And then
Mhm.
I thought we were in a totally different grouping of communities, and sometimes small town communities, it's not who you are, but where you're from. And
Yes,
so that was a little
exactly.
bit like that. And
Mhm.
then the next grouping of communities, I thought, okay, I'll take a stab at it again. I really wanted to, I just had a passion to bring some voice. So in
Mhm.
2005, I ran and I won that election. And, and I said this before, being a female leader is difficult. And there is a stat that says you have to be asked like 4 to 7 times to run for anything.
Ah,
And
okay.
that's certainly, every time I decide to put my name forward in any of my capacities, I always have that hesitation. Can I? Should I? Am I the person that can get the job done? And
Mhm.
so you hesitate. And that's, if I could say something to all the female leaders out there, you should try and you should do it. And you're worthy of the position. You just got to convince yourself. So.
I think sometimes we're our own biggest obstacle, convincing ourselves that, yeah, I could do a really good job at something because there's always plenty of people out there who will tell you, oh, you don't want to, oh, it's hard, oh, it's time consuming. There's plenty of reasons not to, but that drive has to come from inside. And it's quite clear that, it really comes from inside for you. If
Well, the
you're,
other thing, if
go
I can
ahead.
say one more thing, is I like to do stuff for people, and that's what in this capacity you're doing, right? But when you have to go out and say to somebody, "Can you vote for me? Can you sign my nomination?" That's
Hmm.
the hard part because you're actually asking somebody else to do something for you, even though
Yes.
it's really for the greater good.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. It's like, "Can you support me?" And it's so hard. So.
So how many of those signatures did you have to get in those early days when you were
Um, it's changed now. I think it's 10 on your to be elected to the school board, and
okay.
it's 2 for the provincial body, I think. So,
Okay. And so is that where you sort of tap into family and friends and, hey, can you give me a hand getting this ball rolling before we get into full election and the posters and the lawn signs and
well, in my subdivision, which of course is what puts me in any position,
Mhm.
I right from the get-go said if I'm going to represent all these communities, I need names from every community. So, like
Ah,
my subdivision spans from McLean down to Sedley over to Momart,
okay.
Vibank's in there, Capel's in there. So I
Mhm.
made a point to get a signature from somebody from every one of those communities.
Mhm.
More difficult at the start because I didn't know many people, but now I tend to
Exactly.
lean on my school community council members
Mhm.
and the chairs often. And if I feel like if they will give me their signature, then I'm good to run. If they're hesitant, or
Exactly.
then maybe
Mhm.
I'm not really the person anymore. So.
Yeah. What will happen after COVID? Are we going to see some fairly significant board turnover across the province just because so many board members will have been burnt out? What do you think will happen?
Well, unfortunately, we were at the very beginning of our term. We had elections in October. So we
Right.
are just in our first year of 4 years.
Okay.
So maybe the benefit is we'll get past this. And then, I mean, the other thing, I really feel bad for the new board members because they really haven't experienced trusteeship at all. We
Yes.
opted to stick it out working from home. A lot
Hmm.
of conversation about if all the educational leaders end up out because of COVID,
Right.
that's not a good place to be. So we opted to
Hmm.
work from home. They haven't experienced life as a trustee as we know it,
Right.
and it was difficult. So I hope that the next 3 years after this one's done, we'll get back into the regular and get back into that. What can we change in the system?
Hmm.
So.
Get back to the job of improving education versus really just trying to maintain some sort of education level. One of the things that, again, as a parent, but I would expect as a trustee as well, we're always thinking about the quality of the education and future, right? And so, okay, what happens if they miss 3 months in 1 year? What happens if they miss 3 months, 2 years in a row, right? And we start to do that math in our head. As a parent, we had one child who continued to stay in person in the classroom whenever that was allowed. And we had one child who went online. And so, of course, the child who was online, well, she felt ripped off because she never, got this time off as she perceived it to be, where the one who was in the classroom and then had to come online, he was able to do his online work in like 2 hours in the day because there was no recess, no phys ed, none of the hallway passing. Like he was done in record time. So I watched my two kids and the interaction, and my daughter, because she was so in routine with online school, like she did school from 9 till 4 every day, and that was just her routine. But she watched her brother and she's like, somehow this did not work out for me. Right. Now, I do have to credit the online school that we chose, I'll say the quality of the work, the the depth of learning that was presented. I was very impressed with it. Online school did not end up to go nearly as well as we would have liked, but the subject matter was really there. Of course, the social side falls down in a situation like that. Absolutely. So, how do you perceive that these next few years will look with all of our brand new trustees, or many that are brand new to the positions? What is going to start to change? Is there still funding questions? Like, what's that top agenda items?
Well, there's a few things that come to mind. So first, we got to get our kids back to school, and we really believe that we believe in the system. We believe that a teacher in front of students is a really good place for kids to be. And I do
Mhm.
respect there's some kids, because of their own challenges, they need to have access to a different type of learning. So that
Yes.
aside, most kids really need that uh, uh, interaction on a
Mhm.
day-to-day basis. So
Yes.
we got to get them back in the buildings. We've lost some kids. We've lost
Okay.
some vulnerable kids
Mhm.
that we need to get back. So we're talking about, how do we attract kids back? And we need to start with first things first. We've listened to a lot of Kevin Cameron sessions,
Mhm.
and he talks about relationships, and we need to make school fun
Yeah.
and make sure it's really attractive. So that's first thing first. And
Mhm.
that we're going to move through the pandemic, but it's going to be a word in education for a very long time, unfortunately, because you're
Yes.
right. Kids have missed some significant blocks of learning.
Mhm.
What we want people to understand is we got this, and we're going to take it slow. We don't expect a kid that's going into grade 3 to be in the first month of grade 3, every child. We know that
Right.
that's not possible, but we're going to
Mhm.
trust the educators,
Yes.
um, to get them there, and we're going to take it just a step at a time. That's all we can do. um,
So, Jenna, just let me interrupt though for a second. So, when you say you've lost some kids, do you mean just from COVID, or are you expecting that some kids will stay online even though the seemingly most serious part of the crisis with COVID has passed?
well, I can't. It's hard to predict the future. Potentially, some might stick with an online option. I
Okay.
think our biggest worry is the vulnerable kids that just they
Okay.
didn't engage, and we
Hmm.
percentage of our school population that we have to continually work on to engage. And we were doing really good with attendance and
Got
all our
it.
systems to get them in school, and so
Hmm.
now we have to get them back, and because
Yes.
we need to get kids graduating. So, and then
Hmm.
like the second part of that question is, we have what's called a provincial education plan.
Okay.
I co-chaired the committee that went out and sought feedback from across the province on what a new plan would look like. Then the
Hmm.
pandemic hit, and so now we have an interim provincial education plan because that
Okay.
plan was supposed to roll out. We had to pause it, and now we had to look at, okay, where are we at? So now we're going to look at a few things that we need to accomplish in this next year, and then we're going to get to our main plan and get on with the future,
Got
um,
it.
best as we can.
Okay. Yes, that makes much more sense to me than absolutely. So, how many years do you think you will continue to volunteer the way you do? Wait a second. I
Well,
want to wait, back up for a second. How many hours, either on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis, do you volunteer right now?
I've often thought I should write it down at the end of a day or the end of a week. Um, it- It's a lot. The meeting part is one part.
Mhm.
And then it's all the phone calls and all the emails and all that.
Yes.
I probably work 2/3 time, maybe. And
Okay.
there's times when it's maybe half time. But
Mhm.
the thing that a really big mentor of mine always said, you can't count it in time because it's always on your mind. So when you're going through really big
Yeah.
things, it doesn't leave you. So you don't just put it away and then go do your regular life and your regular business. You're
Mhm.
just so it's just there. It's not like a job where you go and then you come home and then you have your free time. So
Exactly. Yeah.
how I mean, I don't have any plans for an exit plan. I mean, we
Mhm.
always contemplate it at the end of a 4-year term because you have to decide, are you going to get those nominations again? And
Mhm.
this is a bad time to ask because we're just in a pandemic, and it's like
Exactly.
we didn't, typically we take February break. We tell all our staff, go have a holiday. We have a holiday. We take Easter break. This year we took no breaks. We took Christmas. I didn't have any meetings for a couple weeks. And then the rest of the time, all of a sudden we were like booking
Okay.
meetings no matter when it was. And it was like, you guys, we haven't taken any time to just decompress. So I'm looking forward to
Exactly.
that.
Mhm.
Uh, July,
And
we paused, like we said,
okay.
no meetings in July.
Yeah.
Our senior leaders need a break. Our school staff will be on a break, and we're
Mhm.
going to take July. So,
Okay.
and then we'll ramp up back in August. And I mean, there'll still be stuff. I know there will be, but it
Mhm.
won't be scheduled meetings.
Right, exactly. And sometimes that's part of it. And, interestingly, of course, our restrictions are changing over the summer. And so you almost need to take July off either way just to see how it's all going to sort out. You're not going to be able to make any decisions until, what happens with the restrictions? Do they stay in place? Does anything happen with this new Delta variant? Like there's a number of questions that are out there that it might be the week before school again before you can get back to anything on those decisions anyway.
Well, and the good thing this year is we're sticking with the levels. So you would have seen like level 1 means this, level 2 means this. So we don't have to
Yes.
create that from scratch. So
Mhm.
now we know, like, well, and you're exactly right. We're going to wait till August. We're
Yeah.
crossing our fingers. We're optimistic.
Yes.
And but if we're not, we'll pick a level that we have to be at.
Exactly. Yes. Janet, we only have a couple of minutes left. Can you talk to our audience, and if someone else is either interested in being a trustee or really has a passion for education or anything else that benefits the community, where do they start? What is that first step when you've got that burning desire?
Well, this is how I started. I started locally. And so I always tell parents, every parent should serve one term or 1 year on a school community council.
Yeah.
Start there. You'll learn a lot. You'll benefit your own kids. You'll get a bit of a taste and a passion.
Yeah.
And then from there, you just need to have that in you, that you want to serve. And like, I love bringing the voice of the communities that I serve into the education sector. And
Mhm.
we have a thing we call a public voice in publicly funded education, and that's my role. I really thoroughly believe that education belongs to community. So if you have that in you, if you really believe that parents should have a role, we almost lost parent voice in education, and we had to work to get that, to sustain that. And
Mhm.
governments across the country are starting to look at, do we really need elected trustees? And I will beat that
Oh,
drum forever, because
wow.
without someone to be your voice, and you get to pick your person as a parent. You can decide if you like the job on a ballot or find somebody else. That's the funding principle of democracy.
Yeah.
So just be that voice. If you can do that for your communities, I mean, I spent a lot of time, I volunteered a lot of time, but what I got back and the growth in me and as a person, I could have never got that in my regular everyday life. So
Exactly. Wow, I had no idea that was happening at the national level. So that will be a kind of a hot issue to, just kind of keep track of.
it's
Wow.
been happening for years. Some provinces lost the right to elected school boards, and Manitoba right now
Oh.
is in the midst of it. So if you look that up, you'll see that they're in a big battle. They
Mhm.
might not have trustees towards the end of this year if they go win the fight. So
Hmm. One last question, Janet. So just really quickly before we wrap up, if someone would like to reach out with you or reach out to you, is that okay? And how would they contact you?
Yeah, anytime. You could tell I just love to talk about education. So you can reach out to me at my email at janet.kotylak, just as my name spelled on the screen, at pvsd. So it's Prairie Valley School Division at pvsd.ca. And or you can call me at home at 424-2210.
There we go. Did I get it right on the screen?
Yes, you did.
Okay, perfect. Because this is the wrong time to get it wrong.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
All right, good. All right, I will wrap us up then. So thank you, Janet, for being here with me today, and congratulations again on your award. I find the opportunity each year to talk to the award recipients just one of my favorite parts of doing this podcast. So thank you to you and congratulations.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
If you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can email me at barb@googlegirl.ca or reach out on Facebook and Instagram at abovethefoldca. Just a reminder, you can even submit questions in advance of our live show on the Facebook page. So I'm your host, Barb McGrath, local business owner and Google Girl. Remember, you worked hard for your success. Don't keep it a secret. Bye for now.